Welcome back, everybody. It is another episode of Touched by Horse. I'm your co-host, Chris Angel, and I'm here with your hosts today, Barbara and Bibi. Hi, Barbara and Bibi.
Hello.
Hi, Chris.
So great to have you. I'm so excited to hear about this card deck you've been working on. But before we get there, let's just create a little context, shall we? How did this Messages from the Ridge card deck come to be? Like, where did this all start?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So for me, it started almost 8 years ago at this time of the year. It was the May Court that was in Virginia, the second one that Carolyn had. And Melissa challenged me to channel a message from the horses. Now, bear in mind, I had never channeled in front of anybody. I never even considered myself a channel. So that was a real challenge.
Wow, yeah.
So I did. And then over the next year, that began an opening for me where horses started communicating with me. Not like animal communication, but, sharing, purposes and messages. And then I did a road trip, and that particular year, they had, the horses were sharing with me what they considered their vision at each of the locations and, what their purpose was. Then I ended up taking a class on purpose, and one of the projects was to do a particular thing of finding the higher purpose. And I was kind of challenged by my group, my peers, to do it on the horses. And so I invited Barbara Broxterman, and I invited Ashar Morris. I'm naming their names because they're not all here with us. Vicky Kiwika and Ree Butler, and then myself. And so the five of us worked on the project to find the higher purpose of the horses. And then on our own, we continued. We met every month. And so one of the things that came out of it was beginning to pull together messages. And then we discovered that a card deck was in order. So it wasn't something that we saw at the beginning. We just ended up doing that.
Right. From the beginning, it sounds like it was about understanding and then relaying the higher purpose of the horses. They're right?
Yes.
Is that right? Okay.
Yep. So for my project. And so that once we did that, the quote project was complete. However, we kept going. And that's where the card deck came from.
Totally got it. Yeah. Barbara, tell me a little bit too about just because before we hit record here, you were talking about how horses weren't, just a vehicle.
Right. Bibi and I had often talked about this. I've been with horses most of my life. And a little bit of background. I was an Air Force brat, whatever, and, got moved every 2 years, but my daddy would always let me bring my pony. And luckily for me, that became my source of going through a lot of change. And I could always go back to my horse or my pony, whether, whatever was going on in my life. And there was constant change.
Yeah.
So Bibi and I had often talked about what I heard from the horses. And I just kind of thought everybody heard everything. Like the dogs talk to you and the cats talk to you and the horses talk. And the other day a bumblebee talked to me. And I'm like, Bibi goes, no, I've been told I am downloading. And anyhow, we started talking about the horses, but Bibi and I had met while we were both students of Touched by a Horse. And then we graduated, and all five women in our group are graduates of Touched by a Horse. So we use the equine gestalt method quite frequently to start gaining access to the horse. And then at one point, Bibi explained what an avatar was. The only thing I knew about an avatar was, the little green man in the movie Avatar. And I was really reluctant. Bibi will know. I was like, no, I know this horse. It's not it's real. And she goes, yeah, avatars are real. So we had to go through that. And then each one of us women waited until our avatar would arrive. And literally for over 3 years, we started writing the messages down. whether
Messages from,
from our personal avatar. From
got
the
it.
whole
Okay.
thing.
Yeah.
And all the avatars were Equus.
Got it.
And all different shapes,
Mhm.
ages, had different messages. It was really intriguing. Each one of us.
And you did this
so
for
different.
3 years?
3 years.
Wow.
Yes.
On a monthly
And,
basis or?
Pardon?
On a monthly basis?
Yes.
Wow.
And there were times where we were like, we don't know what we're doing with this. We're just collecting this information.
Right.
Of course, Phoebe was using it for her part of her curriculum, but we knew something else was going on as well.
Wow.
And so then at one point, it was decided that we would invite our avatars to come together as a herd and see what kind of dynamic process would develop. And then the question was, can we speak to someone else's avatar? And then the question was, well, what color is your avatar and how big is it and how old is it and does it matter?
Wow.
And so once these avatars became a herd, then when we'd either go to the ridge or we would have, when we would start up, we would go ahead and each person would take the group with the herd to a certain place. Inevitably, we started going down across the mountain stream or out in the hills, and then Vicki would bring us to the ridge. And what became not only apparent, not only were our avatars there, but once we reached the ridge, it was the whole greater herd. I mean, there at times these huge bodies would swirl. Sometimes just one would show up, the others would stand back. So we learned about time, we learned about dimension, we learned about space. We learned that they were always there. But their message was clear. They wanted to interact in a way to help mankind.
Right.
And allow us to recognize that only together can we be better and can we serve each other.
This is what I love about this work, where it's like we said before, horses have a higher purpose. There's a bigger thing happening here than just riding a horse, competing with a horse, using a horse in war. There's more than using horses, that there's actually wisdom, is what I'm hearing from you, wisdom that is getting passed on from horses. And even a message for us as humans. Like there's an opportunity for us as humans, if we can listen right now, that there is something that wants to be shared. That's what I'm getting from this conversation.
Very absolutely.
Yeah. Tell me more about that, Bibi. You had mentioned that there is a higher purpose. What did you start to notice after 3 years? Like, what was the purpose that horses were sharing?
So horses are sharing that, it depends on the avatar.
Sure.
We found, for example, like the Shara's avatar, which is Wilma Emma. She speaks in capital letters sometimes, and she's the Earth Mother, very, very grounded, and is filled with love. So her messages are around, like love. Right? Xanthus is an older horse, and in fact, Barbara actually ran into a statue of Xanthos, when she was, visiting a museum that rocked her world, quite frankly. Wow. And so he talks a lot about leadership. All right. Painted Two Feathers is my avatar, and he talks a lot about possibilities. Vicky's avatar also talks about, possibilities. And Ree's avatar, not quite sure how I classify Ree's avatar, but, she's actually has two of them. One is an older horse and one is a younger horse. And, so there's wisdom as well as playfulness that comes in there. And her message is much, much more, Ree's personal message is much more about bringing joy into life. So each of the avatars have their own, flavored spin, whatever word that you want to use on it, message that they're looking at. And so my avatar can be quite pithy at times. And so, we quite frankly edited out some of the things like get it juice.
Oh, that's too bad. Can we have a second deck maybe of just a pithy deck? maybe would be great.
Yeah. And so, kind of like, you can get happy in the same clothes as you get mad and angry in,
Yeah.
so choose, make a choice,
Right, right.
but that's, so we toned it down a little bit, on that. But it's so each one has their own thing, and it all supports what their mission is. In the purpose work, we've got an essence, a blessing, a mission, and a message.
Yeah.
And their mission is to unite the hearts of humankind and Equus. And so, it's from my perspective, that's a lot of what we learned in this process. And to recognize that each horse has its own voice, as well as each person.
I want to ask about that because you've been in this kind of work for a long time. You both are deep thinkers. You're both very spiritual people. And so how was this experience a revelation for you? How is this any different, or what did this show you that you didn't already have access to before?
Ooh, from my perspective, I'll let Barbara answer for her. From my perspective, one of the things that makes this deck unique, every deck, it's my firm belief that every deck that a person creates, there's a collaboration between both the person and the horse, because there's several horse decks that are out there. Melissa's got one.
Right, right.
The difference that I feel has happened here that, puts a different spin on it is the fact that it's 5 women and 6 horse avatars. That's a lot of people in the mix, a lot of entities, a lot of energies.
Yeah.
And so it's a collaborative effort. And working the collaboration is really, for me, was a learning experience. Because, there are days, quite frankly, I was not happy with the way things were going. That was kind of like wanting it to go this way. And, other people wanted it to go that way. And so, learning to work in a collaborative team was huge. Being honoring and respectful of the space that each person needed, to bring in the information, to collate the information, to be honoring of the voice of the horse. That was one of our, you might call them requirements, is that we would honor the voice of the horse as much as we honor the voice of the other individuals. So to me, that was a huge, huge, huge learning experience, is to be able to pull that together. And I feel that that's true for everybody, that I'm not speaking out of line when I say that all of us experience that.
Yeah.
Barb, what about, your particular?
Yeah, I totally agree. Being a person that usually works on her own, myself, coming in as a herd member was a real challenge. And we also had to recognize within the horse herd, sometimes there's one that isn't maybe quite meshing, and they will go off and find another herd or leave for a few days and come back. Hopefully they survive and the wolves don't get them or something like that. But they come back. But we had to allow that interaction of being able to leave and come back and still honor them. And the other thing, and BB would really keep us on task on this, when we'd get going or we'd get tired and, it's like, well, what other messages need to come through, or selecting messages, questioning whether it was my personal message of maybe something I was going through in my life, and separating that from making sure it was truly Xantha's. And that's difficult.
Yeah.
Because your personality or your issues or whatever it is you're going through at that time can really get in, mangled up in it.
Yeah.
And trying to separate it. So to keep the purity and the quality of the herd and what we were hearing. And sometimes we didn't like what we heard. Yeah. Like when they told us, hey, about a year ago, you've got to make a card deck. It's necessary that others get to hear our messages, it's not just you. And oh, by the way, we're sending messages out to others as well. They just may not be receiving them. So you may be receiving messages from Equus and don't even know it.
Right. Yeah.
Or can't accept it. And that's what we're hoping too. This card deck will be able to open that up. And not only will you hear these messages from the Ridge, but you'll probably start getting other insights associated with the herd.
I love that. There's something there's a couple of things that come up for me in this. One is how amazing there is our experience of ourselves as individuals. And this is where I think most of us live our lives from. You know, I'm going to produce a result. I have my own intelligence and answers. It's very uncommon to begin to experience oneness as a community or collective. We're used to experiencing oneness with ourselves, but that you, for 3 years, pulled this project together just really speaks to something on the cutting edge of what we get to experience as species, like as a people, like that you've had that experience now. And I think you're passing that on through the deck. You're giving others a chance to experience a collective through the deck, which is so cool.
Yeah. Collective consciousness. Yes.
Yeah, and I really like to thank you for bringing that up, Chris, because this work is an extension of the work that I do, in my business,
right.
My profession, which is to acknowledge the fact that there's a consciousness in all things.
Yeah.
And we choose to acknowledge it or not, it's there.
Right.
And to start, working with people and educating them on the fact that there is that consciousness and that you working in that unity and oneness.
Right.
And so this was a perfect example of getting an experience of that, of working in oneness.
It really feels like, in some ways, like a new frontier in sorts. We've expanded and pioneered the spaces of our individuality, and there's an opportunity now, an opening to explore what it is to create collectively, like beyond government, beyond the different ways that we tend to organize ourselves in community, but to do it from a place of oneness, not policy, procedure, right? But from a place of consciousness, which is really cool. That's a whole new place to explore. If we could organize ourselves or connect with each other in a way that accessed that would be amazing. What could we create?
Who knows?
Well,
Yeah.
And I want to bring one other really important thing that came up from my background. I'm an engineer, and I say I went from my head to my heart when I got into this program. But for me in the beginning, it was difficult. We didn't have a spreadsheet. We didn't have the manager, who's the data processor,
right?
And BB can attest to this. It was really hard for me not to know who was in charge of X, Y, and Z. But as things morphed, all of a sudden, one person would say, you know what, I'm going to take over the phone calls. Another would say, I'm going to go ahead and set up the scheduling in order for us to have our meditation. And then someone else, then once we were directed to the card deck, then we're like, well, who's going to do the artwork? And I scribbled some things down, and everybody scribbled stuff down. And then Vicky's work just became beautiful. And Vicky said, I'll do the artwork. There was never anyone appointed to do anything. We allowed it. And believe me, at times we're mixing it up. And I mean, it sometimes felt like it was going down the drain, not coming out. And then we waited. We had to learn to wait a moment to present itself. And when it did, we knew it was right. And that's such a huge lesson.
Yeah.
Huge lesson in corporations, businesses, families. They all can take in. You have to wait. And then it will present itself. And none of us want to wait, right?
Right.
Done.
Right. Well, that's what's so compelling about this whole, not just the project, but that the project was a case study in, an example of what this looks like and what's possible, and how different this is. This is a paradigm shift for sure. Yeah, for sure. So for those who aren't familiar with decks that much, like what is a deck and how do we begin to access what the deck wants to share? So what is a deck? Let's start there. What is a deck?
Well, this is the prototype. It's not going to quite look like this.
So it's like a deck of cards.
It's a deck of cards.
But not playing cards with aces and spades and things.
No. We had, like I said, hundreds of messages. We had to bring them down. And we each created the same number or selected the same number of messages. And then we selected messages from the whole herd. So what you would use this deck is if you're pondering, you need to have some insight other than maybe what your brother or sister or mother are telling you, or the internet's telling you. Just unplug.
Right.
Sit and be present. You don't really even have to ask a question, because we know from Gestalt, we own all the answers. They're deep within. But they have to be brought out and exposed. Sunlight has to be put on them in order for us to be able to find it.
Yeah.
And that's what this deck helps people find, that place where they can connect. And it will either speak with them from a very specific place, or it may speak very broad.
Can you speak to, maybe BB, take this one. What comes up for me is sitting with a deck and just rifling through, like, nope, I don't want that one. Nope, I don't want that one. Nope, I don't want that one. How do I need to show up to a deck in order to receive the message that is there?
Yeah, so Barbara already, mentioned it. It's like being present. And part of it too is like, having that willingness and that openness to allow wisdom to come to you. It's like receiving your life.
Yeah.
Having that ability to receive your life, as opposed to go out and pound the square peg into the hole to make your life. All right. So what you have here is the deck, and it's just a matter of, as Barbara said, you be present to it. Just take a deep breath, and just say, I'm open to receive the wisdom that is given to me in this moment. And it doesn't even have to be that formal.
Yeah.
It's just that, but it's that willingness to show up in that way, that I'm willing to receive. And we thought that what we might do with this is give you an opportunity, since you don't have a deck handy, to like pick a number, such and such from the top or the bottom. And then Barbara will pull the card and read it to you. So there's no magic other than be there.
Okay. I just need to, hang on. I just need to adjust my energy. Such a task-oriented man.
Yeah.
Hang on.
No, okay, I'm gonna bring you to the bridge, okay? So you can connect with the herd. Imagine yourself walking to the ridge, looking out into the vast wilderness. You are now on the ridge. Quiet your mind. Hear the distant hoof beats. As they get nearer, their sound becomes louder. Let their hoof beats sync with your own heart rhythm. Inhale deeply. Smell their essence as they approach. Observe some stand back while others come in close. Now reach out with your mind and your heart to the horses. There's no need to touch them. Just be present. They've come a long way to be with you, Chris. Their salty skin odor mixes with the fragrant air. Their eyes and their mane are wild from their journey. Wait for them to quiet. Wait. Be still until you sense you are within their midst. Now extend your hand. Take your time. When ready, choose your card. Honor and respect the herd's message from the ridge. It is meant only for you.
And do I tell you now what card?
That feels right.
Okay, let's go to the third from the top.
Okay, I'm going to shuffle them.
Okay.
So they're not in any particular order. Third from the right. Third from the top.
From the top, yeah.
1, 2, and you want the third card.
The third one, yeah.
Okay. Wonder, written by Xanthos. As the new moon returns, the herd stands in a circle protecting the foals as they sleep. The stars sparkle against the deep blue sky. Whoosh. The tail of the horse comet blazes across the sky. See how wonder and awesomeness is revealed.
Cool. I noticed some things for myself, that there is, it was so helpful to have you walk me through or guide me through getting present. I think I was fidgeting at times, so it was helpful to keep going because down the guided meditation or just the guided path, because I fidgeting, and I think it points to something, I think, where we in the human condition can get so things are disposable. This moment, the next moment, and we just burn through moments looking for something. We don't even know sometimes what we're looking for, but there's this panicky, frantic-y energy to try to find something rather than just a resting in and a being with the moment. And that was really helpful to go through that. And then I love it, just totally, when you got to the card, I was in a place of not trying to find. I was just in a place of listening or receiving, to your point, to your word. But that's very cool. That's very cool. Do you use the deck? Do you all have a copy of a deck, and do you go through it? And is it a daily practice for you? How do you use the deck?
So one of the ways that I use the deck is like, sometimes, like I'm noticing that things aren't quite in sync, not quite in harmony. And so I'll pull a card and just kind of get a read on what's going on. So like for right now, I just got the card Divine Timing. And that's really one of my huge lessons, as Barbara talked about, like waiting for it, and that there is a divine timing, and we do need to learn to wait for it and listen for the message that it is the right time. And so, I'll say, oh, okay, I'm being a little pushy. I'm wanting things to come out a certain way. So by waiting for divine timing, then, it's like I can take a deep breath and go, okay, allow the timing to show up. So that's one way, to use it. Another way that I use it is like if I've got, want to ask a question and just kind of get, all right, like one of the things is like, what message would I, would like to show up today for me? Okay. And so then, just pull a card and look at that. Those, a couple of ways that, I use it. I don't practice reading so much. I have done, like tarot readings, because I'm a tarot, but, like here's the book that tells you how to do it. Yeah. And, I've done things like that. I haven't done any of that kind of stuff with this. It's just basically, be a way of presencing myself. Yeah. And slowing down. So Barbara, how do you use it?
Well, in a lot of ways, absolutely, when I've become discombobulated and need to just sit and be present. Sometimes I just can put my hands on the deck. I don't even have to read one of the messages. Like I said, once you get used to it, it opens up to you. The other thing is meditations in the morning. I find I go through some books or different meditations, and I want something different. This is a great way to wake up, a great way to go to sleep at night. Yeah. With a positive affirmation that's been placed on your heart. I also use it. I am in the process of grieving the loss of a husband. And this deck has become very close to me because it does still me and quiet me and allow me to have much gratitude for the whole universe. The love from everyone.
Yeah, that's beautiful. You mentioned before.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, also, you had mentioned before we hit record that sometimes families can use it to
absolutely
have conversations or to
family
have
setting. You could all just decide after dinner, pick a card. And sometimes the teenagers, they can read it, but they don't want to say what it means to them, and that's okay.
Yeah.
because you can have one card for the whole family,
Hmm.
or each one could pick their own individual card that they need to carry. What message do they need to carry with them right now in the family herd? And just knowing what your child has heard or listened to, or your spouse, creates a new uniqueness of closeness and awareness.
Yeah.
And it can be very special. And the messages are short.
Yeah.
They're simple, they're succinct.
That's so good. BB, what were you going to say?
Yeah, one of the things that came up in this process that I wanted to share was the emphasis on language. You know, there's a lot of information going around about, you know, watch your language. That's the thing that you're creating and what have you. So there was an emphasis that was placed in this deck to approach things from a positive way, as opposed to, you know, instead of don't do this. So there are very few of, you know, what I would call don'ts and stop and what have you. That it's that, and that was one of the things that, you know, the horses really wanted us to pay attention to, was the way that we framed the language around the message. And so I really wanted to share that, since I know for me it was kind of difficult at times to let go of the rooting and the, you know, stop, don't do this and what have you.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing is stopping the energy before it ever flows.
Right.
So, you know, to be open to framing it in a positive way was really powerful for me personally.
Yeah.
And I think it was true for everybody.
I love that there's always a message to be received. And sometimes we don't even know. I think it's maybe even sometimes the best ones are the ones that come out of left field, the ones we're not expecting. And I love that having something like a deck as a medium or a tool, a way to interact with this wisdom, just takes me even more out of controlling it. Do you know, like if I want to go look on the internet, I'm going to go search for a very specific thing I'm trying to control to find a very specific answer. Like but this is like, it takes that controlling energy out and allows something new to come in, you know, and I just love that.
Yep, very true.
Yeah, really powerful. Well, I can imagine people who have gone through this conversation with us would want to find out how to get the deck. Like, where do people go to learn more about this deck and in this work?
Yes, so we have a website called messagesfromtheridge.com. And because there's 5 of us that are involved, and I just want to mention their names again: Ashara Morris, Barbara Broxterman, Vicki Jerica, and Ree Butler, as well as myself. So on there will be a page that will, first of all, tells a little bit about each of the avatars as well as the people.
Yeah.
Just a couple lines, and there'll be contact information on there for each person. And right now we're in the process of, you know, after the COVID pause, or getting near the end of the COVID pause, we hope. And so we need to finalize things with the publisher. So if people go out there to messagesfromtheridge.com, there's a place to sign up so that we can notify you when the decks will be available.
Beautiful.
And we'll, you know, once we get everything worked out from the printer, you know, post-COVID supply chain things, then we'll be able to, you know, provide the decks for people.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, Barbara and BB, thank you so much for this. This was a lovely conversation. I really enjoyed where this wound up, where it went.
Yep.
And it's amazing work.
Thank you for guiding us, Chris. And thank you for the
Yes.
work you're doing for, you know, Touched by a Horse and all of the graduates that are out there. So thank you.
Yeah, it's such important work. I just love it. So I love being connected to it. Well, thanks to both of you. Again, all of you listening can go to messagesfromtheridge.com. Until when I see you sometime in the future, BB and Barbara, all my best.
Same to you, Chris. Thank you.